All right. So for some reason, my games keep crashing. Well, not even my game, my computer, which is a peculiar situation because I am going through a PS5 through a Elgato capture card, and then I'm just live streaming from the computer. So there's no reason for the computer to just randomly shut off. Um, Changed out the power supply. Even changed the CPU. A whole bunch of stuff. So with that being said, I got some relaxing music playing in the background. We're going to switch all this about that. I need to do that. Let me see something. There we go. All right. Yeah. So we're going to just relax. Yeah. And we got the relaxing music. We're gonna chill. And I want to see if the computer turns off for me just chilling. So it may be pretty boring. Or not. Maybe this is exactly what I need. But let me change it to just chat. Cool. Yeah. I'll think of better titles in the future, but in the meantime, this is what it is. All right. So, yep, we're gonna record and live stream and do all this stuff at the same time. See if the computer crashes. Really, is just a huge test, which can be interesting, can be fun. Now, to kind of describe the issue, I guess, in more detail, it seems like it's almost even like timed, right? So like if you look at any VODs, if you go to YouTube and type in pseudo llama and you see a VOD, you see that almost all the live streams are about the same length. And that's because it crashes around the same time, which is really interesting, right? So I'm just trying to pay attention to like all my encoding. Yeah, I don't know. Because I'm looking right now, I'm looking at my task manager and I don't see. I mean, obviously OBS is using OBS out of date. Like, let's see. This is up to date. Because I just downloaded the most recent version. Yeah. January 6th. Yeah, I just downloaded that one. So it's not out of date. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I'm hoping 30 minutes go by, you know, at best, right? Like, what I'm hoping is that it's just a capture card, because that's a very easy fix. All I have to do is get a new capture card. But if something like the power supply, CPU, all that stuff, if it's any of that, which I can't imagine it is, because it's doing this with a completely different CPU and a completely different power supply. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Y'all chat, maybe we'll figure it out together, because I have no clue. Maybe waiting here, waiting for the computer to power off. Let's see. Oh. Let's see if we got anything interesting. Oh, it's like, what's going on? It'd be like a fit. Weird. Try that again. There we go. There we go. Beauty and the struggle, right? So all right. So while we're here waiting, to see if my computer shuts off in the middle of the stream, we can go over some tech stuff. So I can upload this later on YouTube. All right. So on the website PC Per, they've been around for a long time, well over a decade. Really reputable in terms of testing, reviewing, and very honest with products and stuff of that nature. So the new Intel 11 series 11 gen processors just launched today, even though you could get the higher end processor in Europe for a couple weeks now, but the official release is today. Overall, it seems to be receiving pretty negative comments, stuff that isn't that surprising if you follow the industry in the space. The general consensus by, you know, outlets like PC Per, other YouTubers, things like that, has been in general, the process runs hot, so very hot, and the performance just doesn't match. The value and performance just doesn't match what is currently available for AMD. That's the general like consensus everyone has, but you see specifically what they say, right? They kind of go over like some of the fluff, right? Like, you know, what we had, you know, like in Antec, they had their review back in March 5th, again, because they were able to buy the CPU in Europe. For some reason, retailers were able to sell them in Europe sooner, which was interesting. And then you kind of see again in general like what the processor allows, what performance to expect in terms of speed and core thread and count. But they kind of talk about their performance benchmark and what they have and all of that stuff, right? And then you have your those performance gains and whatnot, and we can kind of go over like a few, right? So like for example, I have a Ryzen 9 5900X. So again, like it's not completely fair to compare because they may have different settings on their processor versus mine, things like that, but nonetheless, this is the type of processor I have. And obviously, as they say, they're doing a blender test, classroom render, where it's measured in a unit of time. So the lower that number is, the better it is, right? Because that means it's faster, it can render out that scene a lot faster. So For this processor, about 316 seconds. But for the new 11900K, terrible name, we're getting about 447. Now, this is for the classroom. They also have the BMW as well, which about the same performance gap, to be honest. Maybe a little bit less, but yeah, overall about the same. So that's that. And then we have the 11600K, which, you know, if you want to find the AMD equivalent, I mean, really isn't. I guess their last generation, I mean, even their last generation part performs better. It's interesting. It's an interesting situation that is in, because about 5-6 years ago it was a complete opposite issue. You know, if you look at 6 years ago, this chart literally would be flipped, where AMD will be towards the bottom and Intel will be easily by far towards the top. So it's interesting in just 5-6 years how the landscape can change. That's crazy. All right, so, but you know, that's just one benchmark, right? Like, everybody workflow is different, the needs of everyone is different. You know, these are, you know, renders. You know, say if you're, you know, you're trying to make a video game, you're doing CAD, you're doing stuff like that, you know, workflow, things of that nature. Obviously gaming isn't going to show as much of a difference, right? You got Dota 2, that's the first good one. You know, you're talking about massive speeds, right? You know, 11900K versus like the, you know, Ryzen 9. Obviously Ryzen 9 is almost 100. The blue is average, so the average frame rate is almost 100 frames faster, right? You know, but you're talking about like 463 frames a second versus 372. I mean, both are very nice. And this is at what setting? It's 1080p. Interesting. They benchmarked it at 720p. Ah, seems like they're just trying to get as much frame rate as possible out of it. That's an interesting method. Interesting. All right, we've been live for 26 minutes. So far, the PC hasn't just turned off on me randomly. Look at power and frequency here. So how power hungry this processor gets. Obviously, again, in this case, lower is better, right? Because, you know, in theory, you want a processor that doesn't take up too much power, but is powerful, right? So if you look at, say, the 5900X, you know, this is the wattage when it's load, this is the wattage when it's idle, and then the 10900 last generation CPU, about the same. 11900, a little bit more wattage, right? You know, almost 10 watts more. Fine. That can, depending on what workloads you have, that can be more, that can be less. So this number varies, obviously. and also depends how many drives you have in your I mean, just so many things depends on like what's kind of accessing this processor and what's giving you that load. The idle may be more representative of what you get, right? Because that's nothing, almost nothing but background processes running on your PC. You know, load, I mean, so many different things can, you know, access a CPU in different ways that can give you a different number than that. Yeah, so their final thought seems to be Rocket League is not everything they thought Intel you know, that they hoped for. You know, a lot of people looking forward to 11 gen because they thought that'd make them more competitive with AMD. Well, not at all, which is unfortunate. But it's not awful. Like, it's not terrible. A lot of people are saying it's terrible. I know Gamers Nexus said it's like a waste of sand, which is funny, and it may be true in cases of like your hopes were at a certain level and the performance was nowhere near it, right? Like everybody is kind of waiting for Intel to pull out numbers like they did 5-6 years ago against AMD, which I don't think that's going to happen. If it does happen again, it's not going to be for another 3 to 4 years. I just don't think they're there yet. Because AMD is still growing. I mean, their 5000 series launch was some of the biggest increases in performance on the AMD side that people have ever seen. So I don't think they're slowing down anytime soon. Hey, these engineers are smart. They can figure things out. So good stuff. Yeah, it's an interesting situation. But yeah, I mean, let's see where it all goes, because it's hard to get computer parts right now. So I'm not sure if it's better to have more options or less. It's just so difficult getting parts right now, like hugely difficult. So we'll see. But yeah, PC Per is awesome. They do a lot of reviews. They're you know, a couple years ago they were really known for doing